Hello, I'm Horcerer. I want to find out what makes every single killer tick. There's one big glaring issue with that though. I play the Nemesis, essentially only the Nemesis. I physically cannot get thousands of hours of experience on every single character. So, I'm going to be interviewing people that do have those thousands of hours. One for every single killer. Welcome to Stars of the Fog. Alright, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stars of the Fog. Today's killer is the Unknown, a killer based on analog horror, maybe a little bit of cryptid thrown in there, one of BHVR's best received original chapters, and my guest today is, of course, going to be one of the people that is essentially known for the Unknown, ironically enough. So, rather than go on and on and on and try to introduce them to you myself, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, because obviously they're going to know who they are better than I do. So, who are you? What are you known for? And why did you pick the Unknown?
Hello, I am HonestPanda the Unknown main. I absolutely I don't know. I love analog horror. I love cryptid horror. Actually, the thing that ended up getting me on the Unknown to start, it was like right at that first reveal trailer that we got years ago now for the PTB. I don't know, that unique trailer that we had, if you remember which one I'm talking about, where it was someone in their little tent on their phone recording, hearing all these creepy sounds, and then the only glimpse we got was just this creepy creature just fast crawling at someone, and you only got like 2 frames to see it, but like the moment that I saw that creature, I was like, that's gonna be my character. I don't know why that was, because like I for years have kind of always just been someone that's floated between a lot of characters and had many different mains. But yeah, it was just like the moment I saw that, I was very interested. I hopped on the PTB, and immediately, for the first time that I hit like my first long range UVX down on somebody, that's just when I knew, like, yep, this is the main, this is the one that I'm gonna put in lots of time to, and here we are now, probably over like 1,000 something hours now on them.
And so the initial draw, it wasn't like the power necessarily straight away, but it was just like the original trailer, and then you played them, and then that was also a hit. And then, like, about how long did it take you before you really felt like you got the killer? Like, about how long did it take you before you felt like you were a pro?
Yeah, so the initial draw was definitely the visuals, and then after seeing how the power worked, and because I've always loved range killers and stuff like that too, so that immediately was an extra draw in for me. Now, as for like when I became a pro, I mean it's almost like a tough question, because it's with how the Unknown is too, and how sometimes unpredictable the power, how it can even work with the environment. Like, that's a huge thing I'm sure we'll get into later, but it's kind of one of those, every time a new map comes out, or every time they change like collisions on things, it can make the way of, more or less, I would say, for anyone to get really good with the character, like, obviously is practice, 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 like anything else, but it's like knowing your environment. And so really getting to the point where you feel like you master this killer is getting to the point where you know how a map's environment is going to interact with your shot. So, like, for example, on like Wrecker's Yard, some cars or trucks, if you shoot your shot at it, it will instantly explode the shot right on the spot. You can hit the full tile. Sometimes there's other cars where you shoot at it and it will only bounce every time. It will refuse to explode right on the spot. And so it's knowing the difference and knowing what each individual tile that really, really helps you master the character and really get to that point. So I think for me to really feel like I would say, like, yes, I know this character, would probably be, I would say, like 3 to 4 months into really, really playing them. It was more or less when I started recording my own guide video for them, because I did a section on the guide where it was like showing good shots, practical shots that people could use and integrate into their own games all the time. But I did that for like every single map. And in the process of looking for those shots, it was also like, it helped me more or less in my own games too, of understanding, like, okay, well, I've done this in custom games and practiced this, so I kind of know exactly how to do that. It just kind of came naturally after that, and now it's like, okay, I only have to learn each new map, and we only get one, like every 6 months now, usually, like a new map. So
Very infrequently,
yeah, so not too bad. But yeah, that's about where I would say about 3 to 4 months to really master them, and I'm still learning new stuff.
And what do you enjoy the absolute most about the Unknown?
Absolute most, 100% just the intricate trick shots that you can do. Having your power be able to hit through walls or floors, ceilings, just the kind of shots that really throw people off. Like, you know, you could have, for example, somewhere on like any multi-level thing like RPD, game, midwich, if you're, whether you're running aura perks or someone's injured and you can kind of hear them through the floor or the ceiling, it's just having survivors have that moment where they think they're safe or like, oh, they've really outsmarted you, and then surprise, there's an explosion through the floor and they're down. And sometimes there's usually a DC or something goofy at the end. Like, it's just those really satisfying moments, and also just like, I'd say the audio design from when you hit those explosions too. I think that Behavior really nailed the sounds on those. It's kind of like that same satisfaction I feel like you'd get on Huntress when you hit those really long range hats that you can just hear the little like blood gush. It's a very similar sort of feel like that.
And is there a specific, like, favorite map that you have? Is it one of the three you just mentioned? And is it because of those reasons? Is it because of, like, competitive viability? And in general, how does the unknown get affected by what map you're on? Because you did bring up, like, obviously you need to learn shots, you need to learn what collision works, but what's your favorite map? What's your least favorite map? And are those the same as the unknown's best and worst maps?
I would say probably the same, yes. So the best map, in my opinion, and I've seen this, I've asked a lot of other unknown mains too to kind of see like what a general consensus was on best map and worst map. And a lot of people agreed the best map is probably RPD. I believe it's East, is the East Wing is the one with the helipad.
Mm-hmm.
RPD East is definitely my favorite. I mean, RPD West is still fine, but I do prefer East out of the two wings. And I will get to why, but I will also say the worst map, and this is where you brought up a good point with what I was saying about the environment, is 100%, I would say, like Toba Landing. And so I'll start on why Toba's the worst, then I'll get back to RPD. With Toba, again, it goes back to the environment. Like, the amount of trees, the weird shape and collision on the rocks is just, while it can make some unique shots, like I have played on that map so much to the point where, like, even when I was making like the video on it and stuff, like trying to get the shots, like there was just not much for like anything interesting that you could really do on there. Or like, more of the time when I play actual matches on there, it's just I'll go like, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try to snipe someone over here or do this shot here, and surely the bounce physics or something is going to work with this. No, there's always like this invisible hitbox that screws up a shot, or nope, sorry, this tree just, you know, completely denies your shot, or no, sorry, this rock makes it bounce at a completely different angle than it normally would. And plus, being like a big map isn't always necessarily a problem if, you know, I can maintain hallucinations, but it's just the collision on it. It's unique tiles, just, it can be very frustrating to play on. Sometimes it goes fine, but that's typically why I would rank it way at the bottom. And as for RPD, why I believe that one's the best is similar to reasons as to why I was saying that I love the character. Like, I feel like RPD hits every single strong point that the unknown can do. Like, it's an indoor map with multi-levels, so it allows for those like through the floor type, you know, fun shots and whatnot. So stuff that you don't really struggle on. And also, again, using like hallucinations, being able to teleport from floor to floor can also help with chases too, of course. It's also, while it is an indoor map, and most indoor maps, if we were to use like Larry's, for example, doesn't really allow for much like long range shots given like the low ceilings and stuff and constant walls and line of sight breakers. RPD is kind of the opposite, where like, you know, the main room is massive, it's massively high. You got a couple outdoor areas in there too, like, and also even like most of the halls are pretty high up to allow like you can still have long range shots. So it's like, it's basically the map that gives you the best of both worlds. You've got all the advantages of an indoor map and all the advantages of an outdoor map thrown into one. So that's kind of where, for me, why I see it as like the perfect map.
So a lot of good reasons for RPD appreciation. When mine is just I like the aesthetic. It works for me.
I played the game, so I know that map inside out too for that reason.
It always sounds like a joke when I say just play RE2 and then you'll know RPD on DVD, but it's true. It's true.
It really is.
And with Toba being a map that you dislike the absolute most, of course, I just want to ask, in general, is that kind of the same thing as like what you dislike about the unknown the most, like with random collision that doesn't really work sometimes, or is it like the 3-hit thing, or like what's the worst part of the unknown?
Definitely getting back to again like the environment thing, that can be a huge headache a lot of the time. Is just, I guess I would say, for example, we could use shack as an example. So like a typical shack tile, say I'm trying to just veering into through the corner of the door, the survivor's about to jump through the window, and I just want to like aim a shot down at them. Now on a typical, let's say Macmillan map, for example, that shot is always going to work just fine. Or let's say, I guess they're more in the middle, but that shot's always going to work fine. It's a nice, flat, smooth, typical wooden floor. But if we use, say, Toba that has, again, like this, more unique structural reskin of a shack, there's different little cracks or holes on the floor. And now, while people would believe that those are just aesthetic, it actually has its own unique hitbox. Same with, I believe, Dead Dog Saloon. Same thing there. There's like a little wooden hole gap around the center of that. If you now on a normal shack, you could shoot a shot there and it'll bounce and, it'll do exactly what I think it's going to do. On that map, it's just going to instantly explode on the spot and miss the person. So it's like knowing that those little aesthetic things aren't actually like just for aesthetic, they're actual like hitbox issues for this character. That's one of the most annoying things, is just shooting a shot and then seeing like, oh, okay, well, I just got outplayed by the game. Or like even like similar to Huntress with, like hit validation that she's been suffering from for a while, where you can hit someone directly, doesn't do anything. Like I've had many times where I'm shooting a shot, someone's directly in the center of it, and you just don't hit them at all. I would definitely say that's like the most thing. It's just like it can be at times almost like a coin flip whether people are really going to get hit by it or not. Like I have constant times where I'm like, that doesn't hit, that doesn't hit.
Just consistency issues, basically.
Yeah, a lot of consistency issues in that. But yeah, no, the 3-hit thing has never really bothered me. I think like a problem with the killer too, and this is like not something that I've had because of a lot of time on them, but I think something that almost like scares people from playing them more is they're a bit more of a stressful killer with like managing weakened status on people. Because like some survivors can complain and say like, oh, like 10 seconds, it just feels like forever for me to take this off. But some people don't realize there's a 1.25 second buffer that's in place. So like when people break line of sight, they still get that extra 1.25 seconds off of the timer, so they can keep breaking line of sight, making it that I can't shoot a shot at them clearly, but they're still getting their weekend off. And like that, I would say, is also a little bit of a frustrating thing. It's just, it is the short timer. And I think that is coming in the buff, I'm pretty sure. But I was always saying, like, if the 10 seconds is moved to 12 seconds, I think that would be like the perfect sweet spot where it's, still fair, but it's also a little less stressful for people too. Because when you think about the numbers too.
And would that be the main way you would change the killer if you had like complete control over how an update would happen to it? Just be that, or would there be anything else you would add?
If I was to add anything else, well, they also are unlocking our camera in this update too. That is also one of the things I would have 100% added into. So I'm glad that's happening. You can finally look up, which is great. So that's going to make for a lot more Springtrap style orbitals. So I'm very excited to start practicing those. So again, it's going to give me more stuff to learn myself too, which is great. Anything else? Now, I would say, and I'm not really sure how I would implement it, but like it kind of goes back to the teaser trailer and like the menu animation of the character crawling. Like that was something again that drew me into the character, that whole like cryptid vibe of crawling. Like I don't know exactly how I would want to implement it, but like almost if we could do some sort of stance. I actually no, I do. This is something from if you're familiar with Wisfell or Brandon. He was saying to me that we both have had this like want or desire to have the crawl animation into the character's kit somehow. And he mentioned basically that like if we did the stance swap where you could go into this crawl mode. You're still still the same speed. It doesn't give you any like advantage over the survivors other than being able to basically just get yourself lower so we could do different angled shots essentially. And keep in mind, like to keep it fair, like some people would say like, oh well, if you crawl, you would make certain loops hard, but we would make it that you couldn't like M1 or anything in this mode, but you could just shoot, right? Like take a shot and then you'd have to stand up. But like being able to have like lower angles to angle different shots differently, I think that would be a really cool thing to implement just as an option, and put it on a long, maybe like a 30-45 second cooldown, so it's not obviously like a spammable thing, but I think that would be really cool and it would add a lot more interesting dynamic to the character.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds pretty neat as a change. And you did just kind of bring it up a little bit, like just a little bit ago, but with updates to the Unknown and this current one giving it a few general buffs, and the biggest thing being the ability to essentially unlock your camera and shoot straight up, how do you think updates have treated the character in general? And do you think that any buffs and nerfs that the Unknown has gotten over time have been fair or not?
So I definitely, well, one thing I would say, like immediately talking about this update in particular. So yes, the camera angle thing, perfect. The timer adjustment, perfect. Like happy with those. And when it was revealed before that they were also going to be updating like add-ons and stuff, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Because the thing with, we have only had this update coming and one update, which was the usual, like, 6 months passed after the character's release type of update, like just a little go over. And what they did in that first one, they were going to do all these changes where they were going to like add this really weird movement buff. If you're familiar with the penalty that the character has if you do your power but then you want to cancel it, if you fully deploy your power, there's a bit of like a slowdown where you can't quite walk too fast for a second there, so it's like like just a little penalty type thing. But you do have to fully use your power. So if you want to do like a really quick click that's like 0.2 seconds, you're not going to have any movement speed penalty. But they were changing it before that, like even if you just clicked it, you would have a penalty. So like when we tried the PTB out, like myself, a few other people, we were like trying to like compare notes with it. It was just so clunky. It was terrible. Thankfully, it didn't make it to main. Like a lot of us made videos, and I'm hoping maybe by an inkling that some developer might have seen it, saw like the complaints, because it seemed like a lot of the stuff that we said immediately once that update hit, they're like, okay, we're rolling back all this stuff that the Unknown mains hate, but we are gonna like do some changes. Like I would say specifically, and this kind of bleeds into this other new update. Specifically, the topic of like blurry photo is a very interesting one to kind of talk about, because release-wise, blurry photo was a 50% recovery to your movement speed after a teleport, because the character has a slight penalty to the speed. So it's kind of like the whole, like Wraith movement speed when they're uncloaking, where they're super slow and then they get the speed boost. It's just more of you teleport, you get slow for a second, and then you move at normal speed again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, blurry photo reduced it by 50%. So it was almost like one of the greatest brown add-ons. It was definitely probably like the most used add-on. And then they reduced it down to, I believe it's 25% right now. And they added 15% of that to the base kit recovery speed, which people were like, okay, that's fine, I guess. We basically lost 10% total, which, kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Like, it wasn't the most needed add-on per se. Like, the movement speed can sometimes only make slight changes. But then now I figured, okay, if it's at 25%, like, there's not really going to be much, because they're also adding more recovery speed again to the base kit. They then have now dropped, I think they dropped it down to either 5 or 10% speed recovery on the add-on, which it feels really almost lazy to me, or just a very strange thing that they're just leeching percent out of the add-on to the point where, like, because they even said in their notes that it's the most popular add-on, but it seems as though like they're going an almost lazy route with that, and like they don't want to just straight up change the add-on. Like same with last known recording is 8 meters, that like it reduces it down to, I believe, 6 meters for people to be able to see the aura of hallucination through walls. It's just like a 2-meter reduction to something that's like base kit 8. And
So you haven't been really a fan of how they changed the add-ons in general.
No, like, and on top of that, they've basically made Vanishing Box, which most people knew as like the best add-on when it was originally out. That's the one for people, they get weakened once they finish generators. And that was what it used to just be right at the beginning. Then they added it, and I did the math. It's the current one that we have right now before the next changes. It brings your 45-second hallucination time to 83 seconds, which immediately any new player, like that means you have to consistently hit shots to even like get use out of this perk. Like otherwise you're just hindering yourself, barely getting hallucinations at that point if you can't hit shots, right? So it almost like eliminates that for most players trying to learn the character, or even like typical player trying to play the character. And now they're nerfing it even further, and I think they said it's like a 120% longer time, so it's probably over like
Kind of bad.
yeah, it's just they killed it pretty much. Like if that is what's going to live, it's just killed. All they're doing is number adjustments, and they're not buffing or changing anything. Like there's at least maybe 5, 6 add-ons that this killer has that just are not viable. And instead of doing a change,
And most of the time with the add-on changes and how BHVR does them, it's just like they look at the data and like, oh, this one's used a lot, and they don't really think about the why this one's used a lot. It's usually in comparison to the other add-ons.
Yep.
So I do want to ask how you feel about the killer's add-ons in general. Like obviously some of the changes are not are most of them well balanced? Are they over undertuned? And what are your favorite add-ons to run?
So I would say like as an overall, I'd say they're pretty decent. Like there's a good handful that let you at least somewhat change your play style up a bit. Like some let you play a more stealthy approach, while others allow you to play just a little bit more aggressively, or just kind of like change things around in general. For as of like what my main go-tos are on average would be footprint cast, which is that one reduces your hallucination timer by 15 seconds instead of 10 seconds every time you freshly weaken someone. So that just lets me get way more pressure out on the map faster. And my other go-to, funny enough, it's like a yellow, or I guess it's green rare now, is Notebook of Theories. That's just a simple number buff of so when you hit direct shots on players, it's normally 2 seconds of hindered movement speed. This brings it up to 4, which like even if you get those like really annoying misses, if you at least got a direct hit on someone, it can literally change a chase that you can get like a secured M1 on someone that you might have not got. So it's kind of one of those, you either get double reward for hitting a nice direct hit, or you at least can get like a complimentary prize and still maybe get the person down where you normally wouldn't. Those are my typical go-tos, but I would still probably say like if we're going like straight up the strongest and greatest one that I would recommend if people have is definitely OSS report. That one just, it's a flat 5-second reduction to your teleport. It gives you no heartbeat, and it messes with people because it keeps the heartbeat on your hallucination that appears after you teleport, and it stays there for like 10 seconds total. So sometimes you can end up having people think like, oh, the unknown went AFK and he's just sitting there, because it keeps the red stain on them too. And I've had times where people just stand there teabagging thinking, oh, he's just standing there and I'm right behind them and smack him with no heartbeat.
I mean, I've also fallen victim to that, so I can't even like laugh at them. I'm like, oh, this guy went AFK, what an idiot, and then I get hit in the back and I lose 5 years of my life. So
yeah, I just don't always like use that one because I mean it's eerie, it's strong, but it's like when I go to like recommend it to people, I always recommend the 2 that I typically use, just because you're gonna have a large abundance of those. You're not gonna have a large abundance of OSS too.
yeah. So speaking of an abundance of things, the Unknown has consistently been getting pretty solid cosmetics, I would say. I don't know if it's been like an abundant amount or anything crazy, but how do you feel about the Unknown's cosmetics? Do you think they have enough or not enough? And what would you have made if you had an option to get like any cosmetic into the game? And just in general, what's your favorite?
So I would go with my favorite. I've always kind of used more of a very simple set. Actually, it's 2 default recolors. One that's like the red plaid shirts with the gray camo pants. So that's like the body I use. I use the gray silver hair. So it's just the default hair, but gray, and then the garden shears from the grandmother outfit. Just a nice, clean outfit. I don't know. It's just kind of the one I've stuck with for over a year now that I typically go do, but I do a lot of other mix-ups, but which also kind of segues in like as for a whole, I love the cosmetics. I think my only issue that I would like change slightly with, especially I'd say like the releases, like the Zookeeper one. I think that was the last one that they released in the store. I think the only disappointing thing, and it's something I believe they did promise, was they were going to make more different heads for the character, but they did do that with the art contest one. They did do that with the wolf head. I was more expecting even like the Zookeeper to have something different, like even just like they could have just added like a mustache or like some facial hair of some kind, and I would have been like, okay, that's a new unique head. But it's just same face as it usually is, but just like a little goofy ball cap basically on. Overall though, like I would say I would love to be greedy and say like give me more cosmetics, just because I love mixing and matching a lot with them. As for like a favorite, I would love to see, and I think this was one that I saw someone did a similar idea, not this year but last year, in the art contest missions, some kind of like mascot outfit, like similar to how like Clowns kind of has a few of those. I think like some sort of mascot outfit, but like a destroyed, torn up sort of mascot outfit. Like it was almost like they ripped it off of someone, like, you know, like there was a fight and struggle going on. So like you could see part of the face of it's missing. So you can still see like the unknown in there with those empty socketed eyes kind of poking out, and maybe some sort of like goofy carnival plastic silly weapon to kind of go with it. Basically like telling the story that the unknown came to like a carnival, you know, attacked a mascot, but there was a whole like fight and struggle back and forth. Like something like that I think would be really cool for the character, just because I love like mascot outfits on a lot of the characters, like just the goofiest ones. Just more goofy vibes, I'd say, as a whole, that I would love to see with future cosmetics for them.
Because it's already nailing the threatening of it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like just the general aesthetic of the character is already horrifying as is, and I feel like it can still bring that same horror vibe to, like, you could give it the most ridiculous thing you could imagine and it would still make it look scary.
And when it comes to being scary and the character, like, in the trial of Dead by Daylight, I'm not necessarily gonna be like, oh, well, how does it feel to jump scare? But scary as in terms of not being able to win for the survivor role. So, like, how strong do you think the unknown is? I don't necessarily mean, like, you have to just tell me their tier or anything, but with your experience, with your hours, with all your knowledge, how good do you think the unknown is?
So I would say, like, it depends a lot on the survivors a lot of the time too, for sure, which, I mean, that would be a case for most killers. But I feel like by now, with how long the character's been out, it's a lot of people that have played the game against the character enough times mostly know the counterplay. Like, most people go, oh, you know, like, if I'm running away from the character but I'm healthy and they're about to shoot me, I should run at their face and give them a little smooch. Like, that is the typical kind of way that you'd want to do it. Like, most people know a lot of the counterplays around this character, or a lot of people will be pretty good at jiggying around, trying to like dodge long range shots. It's gotten to a point where with some players that they know going against the character so well that you almost have to like adapt. Like, you have to have like a style where you can like play more casual against the people that aren't quite doing the counterplay. And when people are counterplaying, it's having to adapt a different play style to that. And I would definitely say still, like, if I was to still rank them, most people I for some reason see put at like a low A rank. I really see them more as, like, at most, I put them at more of like a B tier kind of rank, but an average would be more like a C plus kind of thing that I would see from a lot of the times. It's just a very stressful character a lot of the time, because there's no way survivors can see the meters for people's weakened, but you as the killer can't. Like, you can see when people are staring at you when they're glowing pink, but like half the time in the match, like I see myself constantly, I have to like think in my head, okay, roughly this person has maybe 2 more seconds left before they're going to remove weakened. Like, do I take the shot? Do I not take the shot? And it's kind of like at that point where I'm saying, like, most people are not going to want to do that in general. It gets way too stressful, or people can get very tilted hearing people constantly removing weaken, people constantly dispelling hallucinations.
There's too much effort to put in for a lackluster result in that regard.
Exactly. It's just so much to manage for, I would say, like a decent payoff, because it's still a very satisfying, fun character, and that's why I still love them to death. But man, it's a lot of extra work to get to that kind of reward, and that's why I see where it's like most characters are going to do what my character can do faster and more efficient, but not necessarily as fun, if that makes sense. Like, that's where I'd put it.
And you enjoy the playstyle, of course, but how about the other half of enjoying a character? How do you feel about the Unknown's lore? Are you a big enjoyer of its story, of all the tidbits you get on cosmetics, or are you a strictly playstyle purist? I do want to ask because it had a really good marketing campaign, and I want to know like how the appeal of the Unknown is. Is it both ways, or is it just playstyle?
Definitely both for me. Funny enough, this is like probably one of maybe 3 or 4 characters that I really actually care about the lore about. And it's funny to say that because it's a character where its lore isn't like the typical, this is the story and this is like the basic breakdown of what happened, like every other character's written. No, every bit of lore we get is just written from those who have experienced seeing it, and it's all these different unique stories. And I feel like that's one of almost its strongest points too, is that because it has almost what you could see as like a lack of lore, but at the same time an ever expanding amount of lore that just keeps coming more with the cosmetics, as you said, just the way that it's kind of been written. It just has this potential to keep building on to its story pretty much until the end of time. And like seeing that, you know, while it has like in similar situations, like even some of its voice lines in game almost kind of like tell a story too, with people going like, have you seen my dog? You think like, okay, well that was probably like, you know, some poor person out in like a neighborhood just walking around seeing maybe there was like bushes were rattling and they're like, hey, have you seen my dog? Like, sir, that might be hiding in the bushes, and you know, they got jumped. Or like someone saying like, oh, can you help lift this? Like someone at like a job that got jumped. We could even jump into like other voice lines fast, of like the fact that a lot of the voice lines in the menu, they were literally sneak peeks to chapters we got after this character came out, but we didn't even know that until afterwards. Like a lot of people start figuring that out. And so it's just seeing that the lore is just written through perspectives of others. I think that's just awesome. And I've seen other people write their own lore on it too. So I just think that's awesome.
And speaking of the perspective of others, playing as the Unknown, obviously there's going to be 4 other players in the trial, conveniently enough. So what do you think the most frustrating part about playing against the Unknown, from the survivor point of view, of course, is going to be?
A lot of the time, and this is, I can kind of base this almost off of like comments I get from people coming in from the end game, or like coming to like my chat and stuff. Usually I see, and I can understand this too, it comes from almost like a lack of understanding on the survivor side of knowing how the character works. So it's like usually not everyone will think about like the whole shots go through walls type thing, and most survivors, is like smart or not, typically like to hug walls to, you know, make it around corners and stuff. That's where, you know, you can really take advantage of people doing that. Like you can just get to a point where you're predicting where people are at, and it becomes like when people don't know what they're doing against them, it just feels like this pressure point of, man, like what the hell am I supposed to do against this character? Like this is just, people are saying like, oh, you're cheating to that point, or like it just feels super oppressive. And when you can get around like with the amount of pressure with teleporting too, like I think like when teammates aren't removing hallucinations, or like no one's removing them period, and just letting them stay up, the character becomes way more oppressive, being able to zoom across the map in not even half a second, and people just get very oppressed by it very quickly. Like if they're not figuring out the shots, not dispelling, like if they're just not doing the counterplay, the character can feel like an S-tier character to some people. I get that. So it's just, it comes from people just needing to play against them more and spelling. And I think like usually like, you know, just trying to unlearn hugging corners all the time, and it usually won't be as bad typically.
Just learning more about the character. So, and for those times when people do really know what the unknown is all about, I do kind of want to ask about like fans of the unknown, because I know some people that really enjoy the unknown. And like, of course, there's going to be people that don't like the unknown as much, but just in general, how do you feel the sentiment around this killer is within the Dead by Daylight community?
So I think I would even go off of what you said in like the intro of definitely I would say that it's more loved than hated, going off that it was probably, I would still say to this day, like the best well received original character in this game. I think where it's like aesthetically people have loved and enjoyed it for that reason. I think I've heard a general consensus as well that people most of the time really do actually love playing against the character. Like most people have said like they're fun to go against. They feel like a genuinely balanced kind of character, and most of the time they usually their only real complaint that I hear most times from the people that do like it is just like, man, I wish more people played this character. And I think behavior still has a long way to go, like with some adjustments. Hopefully these changes coming, maybe not the add-on ones per se, but a lot of the other things coming will help bring more people to the character. And I mean, that's even a goal of mine too. Like, you know, I'll have people come to me and ask like, hey, like, you know, can you teach me some things? And I'm always happy to like teach anyone on it, because I want more unknown players out there, right? Like there's really not a lot of dedicated unknown players out there. Like there's like I pretty much can name them on one or two hands at this point. Overall, the character has been really well received, and there's just the odd person that will be like, oh, I hate it. And that's usually the guys that aren't, going back to the last point, not learning the counterplay and refuse to, just because they're so much different from other killers.
Would you say there's any like really common misconceptions by the people that don't like the unknown, which is why they don't like the unknown? Like obviously you can mention like there's counterplay, like look at the killer, dispel the hallucinations, but is there anything that just is like a widely spread thing that people don't get and you just want to clear up real quick?
I've had numerous people tell me that this character takes no skill, that they're easy, and no, like they take a lot of time to get really proficient on, and some days they can be frustrating and stressful as hell. So I mean, it's like, hey, the next time that anyone wants to say like, oh, you're nice, like no skill character, play some matches and really see for yourself, like, does it really seem that easy? And that's kind of where it's just at, is just, hey, get more people to play it and really see before they make too much harsh judgments.
So just hope that they do a little bit. Well, I mean, you can't really pick who you play against, but look more into the games with like a learning mindset rather than just like, this is some bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah. Like too many people give up too quickly instead of wanting to learn, or they make more harsh judgments without ever playing the character themselves. I just say, hey, like give it a try and see. And you know, if you can master it like right off the bat, that's awesome. Then, you know, all power to you kind of thing. I mean, I'd be very impressed.
And what are some, like, because you suggest people go learn it. Obviously, you have a full guide, but what's some general advice you would give to people picking up the unknown?
So easy first advice that I would give is, if you're looking right for a build, like the main two things that you just want to put on, it's kind of what I would almost say is like training wheels to help people a lot, is modern abuse and discordance. Why do we have those? It's simply the main thing that you need to just start your like unknown adventures, so to speak, and just really starting to learn the character. It's all about getting that muscle memory down as proficient and as you possibly can. And Monitor allows for a lot better. You're able to get those lob shots onto generators. And so it's kind of like a more or less use generators as that training wheel. So Discordance will tell you if people are on there, so you'll know. You have the reduced heartbeat, so people are less likely to pre-leave. And getting people to go for those generator shots first. Eventually, like if you can master those long range shots, then medium to short shots will be way easier, and the muscle memory just kind of kicks in from there. So 100%, I just say those two perks. If you want two extra perks, toss on, that'll help you even more. Pop Goes the Weasel and Nowhere to Hide are the other two I would usually add on there as well. That also teaches people good behavior with the character, but also it's like Nowhere to Hide. You can technically get two procs off of with the character, because it's like, it's just 24 meters around you. You kick a gen. If you don't see anyone, you can TP across the map, and then you still have the aura reading, so you get two procs, and it'll just also, again, it helps you track people down easier at least. And then Pop is just to help people still have some slowdown and, you know, encourage more kicking as well. That's what I would basically say is just if you want to learn, try a build like that out. And then once you're feeling comfortable, then you can adjust the build to any which way that you feel, tailors to your personal playstyle.
And while people are still figuring out their personal playstyle, is there a single perk that the Unknown runs better than any other killer in the game?
I don't think that there might be like any single particular perk that they run better, but I think where their strength more is that because of like the ability to master different playstyles with the character, it's almost like between other killers, I feel like they can make more use out of more perks than most, if that makes a little more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So while they're not necessarily a master of one perk in particular that's like a necessarily needed one. They just have a lot more flexibility than others, I think.
So they're more jack of all trades than like the best at something.
Yes.
Okay, I mean that it tracks from what I know about the character, so I'm not gonna deny that. Sounds about right. Yeah. And a little bit earlier, we were talking about like players not really enjoying playing against the Unknown, and just we've been on perks anyway. So, is there anything for Survivor that counters the Unknown if someone really doesn't like it and doesn't want to play against them and just wants to have like a perk that is especially anti-Unknown, or is there again not really something like that?
Again, that's another really good one. I'm trying to think of one in particular. Like, obviously, if we went off like, oh, sprint burst is annoying, but I mean that's annoying for anything. But I don't really think that there's any particular counter. Like at one point, I was thinking it might have been Patty's flashlight perk. You know the name of that one off top of your head?
Residual manifest.
That's it. Thank you. I was thinking at one point that might have been one because I was thinking like, oh, that'll stop me from going to hallucinations. But apparently hallucinations auras are special and it actually doesn't block those. It would just block generator aura. So in particular, after like testing different things to really see if there was a more particular counter perk, there's not, again, it's more of that jack of all trades thing. There's not really anything in particular that I find that really, stops them. I would just say it's any typical stuff that would kind of, I guess you would maybe say, if anything, actually, when I think about it more, aura revealing perks, kind of like object can sort of do that, but like more stuff that's just survivor side, like maybe even like alert maybe would honestly be a good option. Like just something that gives you free vision on me, like
when you're teleporting around.
Yeah, like you can keep track of me for the stealth reasons, or even like if it's like mid chase. Sometimes one of the biggest strengths on this killer is literally just standing still and hiding. That's to prevent people from removing the weakened status, or sometimes just to trip them up in general. Usually me waiting on the cooldown so I can take another shot. But I would say any perk that you could think of that gives the survivor free aura reveal on you, even for a couple seconds, can be game changing. So yeah, I would say any of those would be
just aura stuff.
Yeah, that would be the most I would recommend to anyone that's looking for like something to specifically counter them.
And while we're looking for something specific, how about specifically looking for like all the cool stuff that you can do on the Unknown? We did briefly talk about it earlier. We did also briefly talk about how like they're getting buffed and getting their camera angle changed, but are there any like special things that would really differentiate between like a new Unknown player and like a professional Unknown player? Like, is there any tech? Like, I don't think it has a hug tech or anything crazy, but what's like the learning curve stuff on this character?
So definitely like getting to what I was saying just in the previous point. Sometimes myself and Wispa, we like to just say like standing still is almost like a standstill tech, as stupid as it can be. Like if you want to just be cheeky or have like a more fun build, you can use Insidious with like the new buff Insidious with it and pretend to be a hallucination to kind of jump scare people if you want. It does work on smart players too, so funny enough. As for like any particular more advanced tricks, again it goes back to the ceiling shots, the floor shots. I guess I even break down shots as like I usually typically say the Unknown. While the power is just shoot ball bounce, explode, hit people. The way you can use it, there's technically like I would say 4 different shots. So a typical shot we classify as like a bounce shot. So that's just, as I said before, you shoot it and it bounces once and then it'll explode. So that's like a typical bounce shot. Then there's an instant detonate shot where most people will say a 90-degree shot sometimes to break it down. So like,
yeah, because it hits both corners at the same time. It only bounces once, so it goes dink boom, like, but it looks instantaneous.
Exactly, and it allows for faster explosion as well. So it's like usually when you're trying to shoot someone going through a window, you want to not aim at the window, you want to aim right at the floor in front of the window. So it instantly shoots and it guarantees you're going to hit the area that you need to hit with it. That would be an instant detonate. And then it goes off the similar premise for the next one, which again, that's ceiling shot, which can be particular with the map, obviously, because you need you need to be below somebody, but you also need to either look for those corners, usually like by the walls, or if it's something like, let's say Midwich, for example, using like one of the fluorescent lights, like using like you have to hit like the particular spot on the fluorescent light to have it detonate. Otherwise, it's going to bounce off the ceiling and bounce down. So it can be particular, but it's a very like commonly used thing still for sure across a lot of maps. And then floor shot is the same premise, but the reverse. It's just when you're above the survivor trying to hit them from below. Now that one's a little more niche because obviously for that one, typically you're going to mostly be having it bounce and then exploding, or sometimes you can detonate it. But the hardest part, and where it's used a lot less, is that most ceilings are actually on majority of the maps are too tall to actually hit survivors through, unfortunately. But maps say like Addams Preschool, if you have someone go down into that basement, you're always going to get the detonation. Like you can hit people because of how low that basement ceiling is. So you can just like, if someone's injured and they're weakened, you don't have to go down there. They're locked down there and you can just listen to their crying and shoot them right through the floor. You're basically in spectator mode at that point. It's very, very satisfying too. It's one of those many things going back to where people would complain about that, saying, oh, that's stupid, but you can do that. It's like, well, it's not easy per se. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. That's definitely where I would say a lot of time for people to practice and things to practice, and especially even going to the bounce shot part, knowing it's knowing the environment. So I'd still would say that's one of the advanced things, just knowing your environment and how you can use different bounce manipulation, like just bounce physics with the character. That's it pretty much. Just use your 4 different detonation shots and knowing your environment. Put all that together and practice, get your stuff down, and you'll be able to be a pro in no time too with it.
And talking about being a pro and even going into spectator mode with this type of thing, win streaking is obviously always going to be like, content wise, it's going to be attractive, like it's cool. Like winning a bunch of games in a row is impressive. People enjoy watching that type of thing. How do you feel about win streaking on the unknown? Like, is it something that you've really gotten into? Is it something you've found success at? And like personally, do you enjoy doing it? And do you think that the unknown has like any advantages on win streaks compared to other killers?
I guess I'd answer the last one for like advantage wise. I don't think they would really have much of an advantage. If anything, going back to what I'd said before, I feel like they have to work harder to get a similar result to a lot of other killers. So I definitely wouldn't say that they're like any stronger. If anything, they're going to struggle a lot more with that, especially like when you get more coordinated teams that are doing, constantly getting rid of hallucinations and stuff. As for like win streaks as a whole, this is actually a really great question, because this is actually something that kind of really, I would say it sort of solidified me really getting into this character, because, obviously, like I said, all the attraction points are what originally brought me in. I was really liking it, and sometimes like I've had that similar feeling with a lot of characters in the past. Like some people don't even know this. Like I actually used to, like when Trickster first came out, I was like one of the top tricksters on the leaderboard for some time there. It was an interesting time for me for sure, but that lasted for maybe like a couple months or so before I was like, man, I want to go back to playing every. But what really stuck it with Unknown is it was actually when the voice actress Zoey Alexandria had passed away. And I saw how awful a lot of the community was treating them and like in treating her death in general. I wanted to kind of do something, at least like, spread a more positive message for the character, because the character was even like under fire as being something very just controversial, I guess. And I wanted to spread more positive awareness with it. And so I actually did my first ever attempt at doing a win streak with them. Way back. This was literally in, I believe, April. Yeah, it was April, just like a month after the character came out. So still was learning a lot on them. But yeah, I did one straight full week, every single day playing Unknown, no other thing, just trying to like, more or less help raise positive awareness to the character, to Zoey, just something. It was just more or less doing this for her. And I would say like as a whole, it was a very fun experience. I actually met a lot of amazing people through it too. And yeah, I think like Winstreaking for me is it's something I definitely actually want to try to do again soon. Now that I've had, over like a year and a half now worth of practice on them. I think I only got maybe 38 wins at that time. I definitely think now I could easily crush that out of the park where I'm at skill wise compared to what I was way back at release time. Yeah, I would definitely say it's definitely something I would say is fun. I think it's good. Definitely not the best character for it, but it's something special to me because of that.
That's really nice, actually. I think that's a very solid reason to even do Winstreak. Wow. And now with Winstreaking in general, obviously there's going to be things that change how Winstreak works, but how do you think the meta has really treated the unknown? Like as far as new perks, new maps, reworks, anything at all that's like not directly to the killer but affects it around the killer?
Yep.
How has the unknown really kept up with the changing times?
I would say like with the addition of more aura reading perks, like this character definitely benefits a lot from aura reading stuff for sure. Like with, doing the more of those like crazier shots at times. I would definitely say that that's benefited more casual experiences. As for like say like when I do more play a lot harder or like even like scrims or stuff for like comp games, I definitely say that like the meta shifted a lot more than just like the typical like we're still hanging on to pain res for dear life on like as like one of those strongest perks. Like the go-to build is almost like pain res, agi, eruption, and like corrupt. I feel as though at least for like that's like one of the strongest builds at this point that the killer really can run competitive wise. That it's just like before, I felt like over a year ago when they came out, we had so many different slowdown perks that gave more of a variety at least. And now I feel like we're hanging on for dear life where the meta is right now, with especially with like where the survivor healing meta is too, with how fast people can pop heals now too, especially with what's been added. It's rough times build wise for sure. Map wise haven't really been affected too much. It's just like as I explained earlier, having to learn each new map that's came out since then. And I still find myself learning more spots because sometimes they like to do little like micro changes to certain parts of maps and changing how the physics works a little bit. But yeah, mostly it's just the typical effect that most other killers have suffered, just kind of dwindling on for what perks really can use in a more competitive or like just trying harder sort of setting.
And with keeping up with the meta and the setting, do you think that, I'm not going to say like you necessarily just like instantly do it or anything, but do you feel like playing the unknown has given you any transferable skills to when you play other killers, or do you think it's unique enough of a killer that it doesn't really have that type of thing?
I definitely would say like maybe not that it's necessarily transferred to any existing killer. I would say, however, looking at the new killer coming out very soon,
The Crossu, yeah.
I believe, like from what I've seen from the Crossu, that I feel like UVX shots are going to work a bit into transferring into some skills with her as well. But I would more talk on like maybe going into the unknown where other killers kind of help me a little bit more with that. Like I would say, as dumb as it might sound, like my time on Hag, like Hag and Trapper has helped me a bit with hallucination placement, which I would also add that to the other strong point to say before was there's, you're going to hate the term we use here, but I would say it's like edging a little bit, as funny as it would be to say, is just spamming your power or using spawn restrictions to more or less place hallucinations where you want because it cancels the placement animation. I would say like doing that, but going back to like Trapper Hag talk is like just from playing those characters enough, you learn different like good trap placement. In this case, it's from playing those characters I learned good hallucination placement, like whether it's placing it at a tile, placing it somewhere near a gen, like just always that's something you always want to think about. And I think like playing those killers definitely helped me with that. And I guess you could say vice versa. So I guess you could say going back to Trapper and that too, it helped me with trap placements back as well. So they kind of go hand in hand. As for like the shot part of things, I could argue a little bit of Huntress, but Huntress is a very
Straightforward.
yeah, like it's also like a niche comparison as like only really uncharged shots or arc shots. More of them are like straight if you're charging up your shot and faster, like like the speed and that'll change depending on your charge, where this is always going to be the same speed and the shot's always going to be like like a similar arc. It's just obviously dependent on your direction of looking up and down. So I guess I would also say too that once because I haven't really been good at the, the fancy sort of like orbital shots with Springtrap, for example, that I see Alran. I've seen some crazy shots from, or even like Levi too has done some pretty crazy ones, just to name like a couple names that come to mind. But I definitely feel like once the camera changes drop and I start to pick up and try to learn orbitals with this killer, I definitely want to just hop onto Springtrap and see if those skills are transferable or not as well, I would say.
You mentioned a little bit of like playing Trapper and Hag and like before the Unknown, of course. So I kind of want to go back to the very beginning of things. I want to ask, like, what got you into Dead by Daylight, and what was your journey from like your very beginning to the Unknown? Like, who did you play first? Like, what roles did you do? Like, how did we get here?
It's a long one. I actually started from the beginning, like 2016. I was actually following the game, like, so I didn't get to play the beta. I wanted to, but I was following it way back when the game was actually in alpha because of a little game that you or many other people probably might know. Payday 2 is actually what was my segue into learning about Dead by Daylight, because they had a little special thing. Because as you may remember too, originally it wasn't just Behavior that owned the game. They were a 50-50 split with Starbreeze Entertainment, which was, the owners and creators for Payday 2 and other Payday stuff. And so they did a little promotion with the Steam community, like, hey, in Payday, you have your different masks and stuff. And it was like, if you follow the community tab for this little niche game that we have coming out called Dead by Daylight, you can get like the Trapper mask and like I think like some other mask for your guys in Payday. And I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I'd love to get some extra masks. I'll follow this. And then I actually decided to actually look at it, and I was like, oh, an asymmetrical horror game. Wait, asymmetrical. Oh, that's just like, I had played Evolve before and I really liked that. Sad to see how poorly the game ended up going, but I thought that Evolve was really cool. And then when I saw like, oh, it's a horror themed game just like Evolve. Okay, this is kind of neat. And so I actually was like happy that I followed that. And once like day one, like I bought the game day one, I played it, and man, was it scuffed, but it was also great. Like, I did like it. The only sad thing about it was that I did not have the greatest PC at the time, and unfortunately the game would crash so much to the point that it was very unplayable for a while. Like, I think I got to play like day one for a little bit, and maybe like a little bit on day two, and then it got to the point where I was like, yeah, I think I have to refund this for now until I can, I don't know why I really refunded. I probably should have just kept it and kept trying, but I had to put the game aside. But every single time when a new chapter, because I still followed it because I really desperately wanted to play it, every time a new character, like, it was like, oh man, the nurse and Nia Carlson have come out, here's a free weekend, guys. And I go, okay, free weekend, I can try to reinstall, let's see, okay, does it work for me? No, it still doesn't, because I was running like Windows 7 at the time. But then I finally upgraded to Windows 8 because I was having other technical issues. And this is the really sad thing, it finally only happened about 1 week after you couldn't get Legacy anymore. So I just missed the Legacy cutoff.
That's rough, buddy.
I know, it's one of my like biggest DVD style regrets. But yeah, 1 week later, finally was able to play the game, and the newest killer out at the time, I think it was the Doctor. Bubba was coming out pretty soon, like a month later after I was playing, or like a few weeks. That's when I finally got back into the game. I was in college at the time too, and I was playing, and it very quickly just became my favorite game ever. So shout out to Starbreeze for actually like getting me to follow for cosmetics and finding a game that I actually love. But when I finally was able to play, I was a bit more of like, I think I was more of a Survivor main, which again, people do not know me by any means as a Survivor player, let alone a Survivor main. But I did play a lot of Survivor to start, because while it didn't run still the greatest. So Survivor was a lot more manageable for me at the time, but I did still play Killer, and I ended up picking up Hillbilly was actually my original main. So I was played a lot of Billy, eventually picked up Nurse as well. But like, I do remember when I did play on day one, because I I went to Billy immediately because that was the first killer I played on the release day, and I was like, I'm gonna come back for you, Billy, and I did. And so I played a lot of Hillbilly and Nurse for many years. Played a little bit of everybody to kind of get them. There wasn't really much of a roster at the time when I was playing, so there was very few choices. Like compared to like now, we got what, over 40 killers now. I think I had around like 8, something like that, to really like mess around with. So I was Billy and Nurse for quite a couple of years, and then I think it was when Deathslinger dropped. I started playing a lot of Deathslinger because I really liked Huntress too. Like that was one I would play at the time, but we didn't have really that many ranged killers. But I picked up playing Deathslinger for a while, kind of became a Deathslinger main for quite some time, got pretty proficient on him, and then went back to just playing a lot of Billy again still. And then I think it was next was Trickster. When Trickster dropped, like I was saying, got good with him, got really high on the boards, and then just slowly dropped off him. Always still found myself going back to Billy. I still go back to Billy a lot these days. I think he's always got that special place in my heart as like my original main that will always be there when I want to like play something fun too that's just not unknown. And then I think it was a very long drought where like I enjoyed all the killers that we got up until unknown, but like none of them really stuck with me the same, like other than like the other two that I mentioned, until unknown dropped. And that's when I was like, oh wait, actually no, right before that it was Blight. I was a stinky Blight main for like another like couple of years as well, because it was a very similar thing to Billy of going around the map fast. And
you've basically done it all.
I've done it all, but I definitely have my preferences of ranged killers. Like anything that's like more higher skill is usually stuff that has techs and higher skill.
Okay.
I even like Nemesis, I almost refuse to punch people on.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
I just tentacle all the time. Yeah. Just way more fun to do it that way. And no, once Unknown dropped, the rest was history with that. Like I stuck with that. And even Houndmaster that came shortly after, that's another one that actually has become my secondary main, funny enough too. It's just another one that you can trick shot on with Snug, as silly as that sounds too. But it's mostly just those lower tier but really fun, tricky characters are the ones that I've enjoyed the most. Now we're here.
And so as like a day one player, it being over 9 years later at this point, with everything you've gone through, every meta, every change, you've been here for a minute. How long do you think Dead by Daylight is going to last?
Well, I do remember them mentioning this was way back. I think this is 2018 when they finally bought the full rights to the game. They said like this whole this like every 3 months we get a new chapter thing that they've been doing for the last many years, like last 7 years now. They said back then that is how they're going to be doing it for the next 10 years from then. So they have this all planned up until 2028. But now suddenly they've hit this bump in a road, and we're getting things pushed back, and now this whole tri-monthly thing isn't going to be happening as much, and they're going for health, which is great. But I feel like at this point too, like especially with more recent events as of when we're talking right now, like with how many times they've been kind of getting into hot water with the community, the one main thing that I've told people right from the start over the 9 years, and seeing how many ASIM games have more or less died off or have clinged to life with very few left, the only way that this game is going to die is if behavior is the ones that do it to themselves. And more and more mistakes obviously is going to cause that. So I could see it as, we could have the game going for the next few years still. Like they could just keep it going. Like games like TF2 still have very dedicated people on, even like 15 years later. I, for one, at least hope that they could do a similar thing. If they just, as long as they don't release another game and they just keep adding to this one, and, they do some right steps, I think that they could keep going. But if they keep also going in a direction where they're going to be constantly upsetting people, they'd maybe have I'd say maybe 2 years at that point, depending if they
don't lock in.
If they don't lock in, exactly. And I think what we really need, I know we do have the Halloween game coming out at 2026. I think the other problem too, it just comes to where these other games are dying off and DBD's still being at that point. Behavior's getting it has been way too comfortable for way too long, which is why I see where these constant mistakes have been going, because it's gotten to a point where they've established themselves for 9 years now. They have what's basically the Smash Bros of horror in their horror asim game. Like, we have so many licenses, and licenses is what brings people in. And this game has been in this constant cycle where they make changes or they add stuff in. It brings like new IPs, bring new players in. But certain changes and or certain attitudes and some of the problems that we've obviously seen them do have caused a lot of like more or less players that have been playing as long as I have, or even like shorter times, like they're stepping back and leaving the game. So like even if you look at like the charts, like I've looked at example at like where there was different releases, where there was different PR problems, you can look on like the player base graphs like on Steam charts, and you'll see and remember those dates, look at those and see where they lost thousands of players. And when you'd see a certain chapter release where there was a huge gain. It's one of those like, you know, circle graph memes where it's like release a new IP, new players join, release bad update, old players leave. And you know, it's that constant cycle that they're in where they've only been basically getting lucky at this point to getting a small gain, but there's been those times where they've pissed way too many people off and they're slowly losing it. But then they get it back with an IP. And again, they also have gotten lazy because they know they don't have competition. Like when VHS was out, there was the free horror ASIM, and you know, it had a lot of potential to give them a run for their money. Same with like Friday the 13th before the legal issues was giving them a lot more things. Like we asked for many, many, many years back then, hey, behavior, you know, like we play and try to rank up in this game so long, like to get like rank 1. But what does it do? It just changed. Like before, it was just a number that was over your head for the month, and you'd play other players that were similarly in that same sort of like rank system. And then you just didn't get anything else out of it. It was only until VHS came in and they started losing numbers that they're like, hey guys, please come back to the game. We're so sorry that you've been enjoying your new toy VHS, but like we'll give you ranked incentive now. So please come back and play. We'll give you blood points, dear. Please, here's a couple blood point codes. So there's always been that. Like anytime they've had competition, they lock the fuck in, and it's great to see, and we see improvements. But then once their competition dies off, they get cocky and lazy again. And we're definitely, because we haven't really had any game that's, you know, like TCM is obviously, you know, they've pulled the plug now. They know like, oh yeah, well, we don't have anything else on the market. We rule this franchise and this genre right now. We can get lazy again. So yeah, honestly, I predict when the Halloween game drops, if it actually ends up being pretty good, you know, I'm about as skeptical as probably you are on it, but you know, depending on how it goes and how it ends up playing out, we might see some more improvements around the release time where they're actually going, hey guys, sorry, here's all those improvements again to the game that you wanted. Here's that health update that you guys have wanted for 5 years. At the end of the day, I think it's really just going to come down to a very long-winded way. Sorry for that. I just think they really need to lock the fuck in, or else they're going to be the ones that kill the game.
And, well, it's not killing the game specifically, but what would kill the game for you? Like, what would be the thing that would make you drop the Unknown for good?
When it comes to things like that, I tend to be, like, very, very stubborn, but I think if there would be one thing, like if they'd like nerfed it numbers wise, because they've been lazy with that, I would still play the character even if they were like the worst character in the game, like old Freddy style. But I straight up just think the only thing that really could get me to drop the character is if they decided to do again like a full more current Freddy restyle where they just completely change the playstyle of the character, like power and everything just completely gets changed to something else. Like it would be like a huge kick in the teeth of like, hey, you know that thing that you've practiced like for thousands of hours, well, that's all gone now. Learn this new thing now. And yeah, I think 100% if they do any major change to the point that the kit is just completely different, I think we're going back to my old pal Billy after that.
So like if you got trickstered, basically.
Basically, yeah. I mean, kudos again to like shout out to Revian for still sticking by the character after all the changes that have happened so much. God, I hope he gets the changes that he wants though, seriously.
Here's hoping, yeah. Well, that's kind of all I've got for this here episode with the Unknown. So, you know, I want to say thank you again for coming on and talking about Hit Killer the Unknown.
Thank you for having me.
And, you know, now this little end segment is just the bit where you get to tell all these lovely listeners your links, where people can find you, you know, anything else you want to share. Just time is all yours.
Yeah, if you're ever looking to join a stream, just HonestPanda on twitch.tv. I also have a YouTube as well. That's just HonestPanda as well. You can find typically I have my YouTube guide. It's a complete over 1 hour guide on all things unknown, pretty much, like advanced tricks, basic tricks. Even if you're a survivor main listening, you can also watch. I have survivor counterplay in here too. And yeah, like I've been a little inconsistent on the uploads. Hopefully by the time this comes out, I might be uploading some more. Want to get some more unknown content as well. Might try little variety things. Yeah, that's mostly it content wise, and just otherwise you're just gonna, if you're on my channel, variety content or continuing to add to the UVX counter. I got #1 on the leaderboard, over 15k downs. Got to keep the numbers up for fun, keep the title up. Mostly just a lot of fun there. So again, thank you so much for having me too. It's fun talking.
Of course, yeah. And, to all you out there that are listening, watching, whatever you might be consuming this here episode on, I appreciate you very much. Thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You know how it is. Go check out HonestPanda here if you want to see some more unknown stuff, and I appreciate your support. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you very much, and I hope to see you in the next one. So until then, bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.